This is Keys to the Shop, episode 84, and today we're talking about crushing the rush. Well, hello everybody, and welcome to another episode of Keys to the Shop, where we give you insights, inspiration, and the tools you need to grow as a coffee service professional. My name is Chris DeFirio, and I'm your host for the show. Really happy to have you along here to talk about crushing the rush. I like the title. Sounds like an amusement park ride or some kind of soda drink or something like that. How can we really serve people well when it's busy in the cafe? And today we're going to be talking about some techniques and some things to keep in mind that will really help you. It's a good framework, I think. Things to employ at your cafe to help you crush the rush. And so before we get started, I do want to thank our sponsors here at Keys to the Shop, starting with Prima Coffee. So Prima Coffee is a specialty coffee equipment supplier, and they're based out of Louisville, Kentucky. From the beginning of their company, they've set out to make the best coffee brewing equipment available to the general public, and their focus is on curating the best equipment for every need, from grinders to espresso machines, under-counter refrigeration, commercial or home use. They pretty much have it all. You go to prima-coffee.com and look at what they have to offer, the resources that come along with it. There's free resources and videos on how to use the equipment, maintain the equipment. I mean, they just put a big emphasis on having the expertise to help their customers get the right gear to fit every situation. And Prima is going to be at Expo this week over in Seattle at the SCA Expo. Definitely take the opportunity to go out there and visit them over at booth 1814. They will be pulling shots of espresso from roasters like Tim Wendelboe, Onyx, Camber Coffee, and if you want to know about commercial equipment, restaurant equipment, wholesale, or have questions about building out your cafe, definitely go 1814, booth 1814 over at the SCA Expo. And my thanks to Prima for their support of Keys to the Shop. And now also I want to thank and give a big shout out to Pacific Foods, who is behind the Barista series line of non-dairy performance beverages, which is designed specifically for barista professionals and the standards that they have for excellence. So whether it's almond milk, soy, coconut, or rice, its ability to take the heat from steaming and produce an unmatched silky texture and keep the flavor balance focused on coffee makes it a perfect choice for your cafe's menu. So Pacific is a huge supporter of specialty coffee, and they've demonstrated their passion for the community by listening to and serving the needs of real specialty coffee professionals. So to learn more about the Pacific Barista series line of non-dairy beverages, simply go to pacificfoods.com and see how they can help you elevate the performance of your cafe's non-dairy game. Okay, so today we're talking about crushing the rush. And, I am kind of hesitant to say this because outside my window right now, it's snowing. And it doesn't feel like spring. There was a few days where it was in the 70s and 80s here. But, in the changing of seasons, as the weather gets better and people want to venture out more, you're going to have more opportunity to serve groups of people. Maybe you're going to have more frequent rushes of people. And when that happens, you want to be prepared. Now, I want to break this episode down into a few sections. We're going to talk about the rush itself, but I think a good place to start is in the mindset that we have towards rushes. So let's just start out by saying around the category of mindset that rushes are a good thing. Busy equals good. I've been guilty of this just as much as anybody else, where you kind of hope that it's not busy. You hope that it's slow. Well, you're not going to make as many tips then. So there's that part. But also, it's good for coffee. It's good for your skills to be serving people coffee and to practice what you've learned, to make an impact on your community. And the biggest impact you can make is when you have the most people from your community coming through your doors. It just makes sense. So the warning here, I guess, from somebody who can lapse easily into this mindset just by being weary from service and being on your feet for long periods of time and not remembering to drink water. Don't relish the slow times too much that it becomes this, hatred or kind of a negative view of a rush or a group of people coming in that kind of disturbs the serenity of this moment we're having on the bar. Again, we make really good impressions during this time. It's also a true reflection of our skill. When you have a lot of drinks to make and you've got kind of some pressure on you during this rush, you know how good you are, rather than the times where you're simply in a vacuum, where you're in the lab or somebody orders one cappuccino and a cookie and you make that perfect rosetta. That's a really fun time. I love simple beverages, and I love I can make a really nice moment for an individual. But when it comes time to make 8 cappuccinos and half of them are almond milk and half of them are 2%, and you've got a bunch of special instructions for other drinks in between them, then it doesn't feel like the barista's dream. It doesn't feel very satisfying. And the trick is to kind of turn that on its head and learn how to be satisfied, draw satisfaction from it. So have a mindset that this kind of resistance that you're feeling, this heavy lifting that you're having to do, is going to strengthen you as a barista and give you an accurate measure of how far you've come in your skill level and mindset. So also under the category of mindset, I think it's easy to kind of hunker down and sort of curl up internally and withhold ourselves from the group of people that have come in or the orders. Like we're trying to escape the pressure of the rush. And what often happens is we feel like we're on a ride. We're being taken for a ride. Or for lack of a better term, the shift is running you instead of you running the shift. Simply changing your mind that you will take command of this group of people, this line, and you will curate this experience for them in a calm and confident way, and just embrace that this is happening and this is a good thing and we're going to have a good time. Just get that mindset in you that what's happening right now is not something to try to avoid or disdain in your mind, but it's something that, maybe you tell yourself, I live for these times. This is the time where we really get to shine and we're excited for this. Our goal with a rush, like any service really, is to be comfortable under the pressure and to confidently serve with consistency to the best of our ability under the limitations that we have. There are limitations in time. There are limitations in what we can do and can't do with our menus. And when we can operate confidently within those structures and improve our skills at utilizing the tools and our knowledge in the midst of this rush, we're going to feel really great about busy times. Now, let's break down a rush. Let's break it down into before, during, and after. So here are some tips that I think will be able to help you crush the rush. And I just like saying that now. I'm gonna say that today on shift when I go in. I'm going to talk about crushing the rush. Maybe I'll get a t-shirt made. That'll be fun. Anyway, so let's start with before the rush happens. What do we have to already have in place to make sure that we're prepared? Now, we already talked about mindset. So we are bringing ourselves to work, acknowledging that we are going to work. We are going to make a lot of drinks for a lot of people. And, say a different way, we're not going to be surprised by a rush, maybe be surprised by a slow time. It's better to be surprised by a slow time than it is a rush. So anyway, before you have this influx of people, you want to be sure that you're aware of what's already in place in terms of times for the rush. Now, you and your cafe know when you get busy. You know that maybe at 10:30 there's a rush, and then there's another pop of business right around 12:30, 1 o'clock, and then another one at 4 p.m. Who knows what your cafe's rhythm is. But if you're aware of those rhythms, then you can take an hour beforehand to make sure and start running down the list of things to make sure that you're first stocked with all of the things that you need, and then know your role behind the bar. So if you have a register, barback, barista, maybe you have other people on bar at the same time, you should have job descriptions and you should have workflows that you already have in place. So it's a good time to be able to review who is doing what. You don't necessarily need to think about this if your manager has already assigned you this. So a lot of times the manager will assign you to a barback role for that day on your schedule. And in that case, you know where you're living for your shift. And there's flexibility in that in any cafe, I think, where you can say, hey, I'm kind of getting burned out on bar. Can we switch to register? That's fine. So the important thing, though, is where are you living during that rush? And what are your responsibilities? If you come into a cafe and you don't have that assigned, you want to talk amongst yourselves and kind of see who's feeling it, is somebody just a little bit grumpy? And that happens, then maybe greeting customers and being at the register is not the right position for them to be in. Maybe they want to be a barback, or make drinks. And that's totally legit. Now, you need to know what you're going to be doing ahead of time. Be stocked up for as many milk drinks as you have. If you're running low on a particular syrup that's in a storage closet and you know that it's your most popular, but somehow, you find yourself just changing the Spotify list one more time instead of getting that vanilla out of the storage closet, and then the rush hits, then you're starting kind of off on the wrong foot. So make sure that you're doing those stocking chores and placement of yourselves and what you should be doing before the rush starts. Now, a good episode to listen to on workflow, which is kind of what we're talking about here, is episode number 2 with Ryan Soeder called Mastering Your Workflow. It's one of the more popular episodes on the podcast, and it's so useful. I'll link to that in the show notes on iTunes here, and definitely listen to that as an accompaniment to this episode. So you've got everything planned out. You're all stocked up. You're ready to go. Your equipment is dialed in. You know where your position is and what your responsibilities are. And now the rush starts. Now we're starting into the section of during the rush. Let's talk to register for a second. Just like our friend Philip Paul Turner said in episode 45, simple, powerful hospitality. You want to make people feel acknowledged, welcomed, and included. That is primarily register's job, and it might be whoever sees the customer's job first. Primarily, this is a register position job. And, the most important thing that can happen oftentimes happens at the register. Now, you might want to jockey for position in the, getting on bar, working the espresso machine. You don't want to work the register necessarily. It does get old having to count change back and punch cards and fill coffees and things like that. There's not really what you would classically consider barista work. But it is a support role, and it is actually one of the most important roles in the entire cafe, which is why I always find it funny when we put new baristas on the register and they're really not in tune with the menu as well as they could be, and they don't have a shadow with them, or a manager with them to help them. Oftentimes, you've seen it where this happens, and it's just because they can't make drinks and you only have 2 people on shift. And so what are they going to do except greet customers? So sometimes you're in a bind, but my goodness, it really highlights the importance of being good at the register. It sets the tone for the entire interaction. So welcoming, acknowledging, including people means greeting them when they walk in, eye contact, smiling, or being pleasant at least, and acknowledging people far back in line too, noticing them, being seen. People want to be seen and recognized. and affirmed, their presence affirmed. That is part of the role of register. And that is going to help the rush not feel so judgy. That's the thing, is you have people standing there looking at their phones or pretending to look at their phones, and we feel like they're just judging, or they're just seething. And if you take control, like we talked about in the mindset section, if you just lean into it, take command, set the trajectory, make it a hospitable one, you're going to cut it off before it ever starts. Now, let's talk about some practicalities. When you're on register, one of the things that you have a tendency to do, now, and don't deny it, don't you deny it, you tend to bury the bar with orders. We used to see this all the time in America's Best Coffee House competition at Coffee Fest when it was running. It was classic for the register to get in this groove where they're just happily serving customers and just kind of not even watching this pile of receipts pile up and pile up and pile up. It is really important that you pace the line. It's, sometimes you can take a little extra time, not to purposefully make it a super slow process, but it really doesn't help to move a line to another section of the bar if they're still not going to get their drink. That line is going to be there. It's going to be there. You're not going to get rid of it. But there's this subconscious tendency for us to want to try to move it away so that we don't have to look at it anymore, so that we don't feel as much tension. Take ownership of that line and just don't bury the bar. Pace the line. And when you're writing down your drinks, write them neatly. Don't make people guess between an E, an A, and an O. When it comes to a mocha, is it a matcha? I don't know. I have to go back and ask them before I make this drink. Take the time to do it right and do it well, and communicate well. Get confirmation first from the customer that the drink that you're writing on the cup is in fact the one that they want. That's like Register 101. Repeat the drink back to them. They say yes, okay, high five. Now, when you hand the drink over to your coworker who's going to make it, don't just kind of, out of the side of your mouth can say like, I got a large mocha here. You just mumble it out there. Make sure that they hear you. Make sure you have a system that says, heard or okay, eye contact, nod of the head, something like that. Make your actions very intentional because, again, you're setting the trajectory and the tone for this service. So one of the things also that happens at Register, because Register tends to be the one who gets the coffee and tea and pastries and things like that, if you have to take time to restock pastries or brew coffee, then you have to take time to do that. It's much better to take a moment and make sure that you're investing in something that's going to facilitate the success overall of the service in the moment. Take that time to brew more coffee, to restock the pastries, than it is simply to run out of things because you're moving the line, because you're not aware and you feel like you can't stop. That's literally your position, is that you can start and stop that line anytime. And if you're doing it for the right reasons, you're doing it for everybody's benefit. Even though it feels like initially, I really want to serve this person. I wish there was some, extra staff on to help me just restock pastries and do other things. Well, most people aren't in that position. So it really is up to you to pause things a little bit, be pleasant, engaging, but also doing those things that need to be done. So Register, if you think about it, it should be a coveted position. It's a highly trained one that sets the tone, the impression that customers get from your cafe. Now, during the rush, let's talk to bar. People making drinks on the espresso machine. First of all, you're going to have to increase your communication. You have to ask questions and clarify interactions. Ask as many times as you need to ask to make sure you're making the right drink. Because now it's just compounding the amount of time by minutes instead of seconds. If the register has to ask a couple of times, that's only a couple of seconds. If you have to ask but you don't and you get it wrong, now you've got to throw out a drink. And where do you put it now that it's dead? You got to make a new one. And that puts all of the drinks behind it farther back. And it's how traffic jams start on highways. And it's just the same thing with cups. So make sure that your communications are clear and frequent, and just over communicate. It's easy to get in a groove and not ask questions and not clarify, but take the time to make sure that the actions you're taking are the right ones, in fact. And sometimes your clarifications and being aware of what's around you will help you catch mistakes that register makes. If they give you a ticket that says rice milk, and it actually what you heard almond milk. So I've done it several times at register, and I've caught it several times as a barista, where you'll say to the register, "Wasn't that almond milk?" And they'll say, "Oh, yeah, that's right. Good catch." Now, if I did not catch that myself, then it would have gone through as rice milk, and they might have been upset by it because they wanted a particular type of milk. So we're all kind of in this together. Be aware, over-communicate, and clarify. Now, here is one that I love. I really love. I might do a whole episode on this one time. Work clean. If you're on the espresso bar, you are at the helm of the thing that generates the most mess out of everything in the cafe. Grinding coffee, water going everywhere, steaming milk. Lots of opportunity to create a chaos. And when you clean as you go, when you work clean, that's what I mean. Clean as you go, you will be mentally more prepared to handle heavier loads. You'll be able to engage with customers more. Something subconscious about it. This is something they teach you as a chef, where if you're in the weeds, one of the things you can do to reset yourself and to get clarity on what's going on around you is to take a quick second, counterintuitive as it may be, clean your bar. Now, if you're at that point, then maybe you weren't working clean to begin with. Now, on the bar during a rush, think about it this way. If it takes you per drink maybe 1.5 to 2 minutes for a large latte, take 5 or so seconds out of each drink to move something back to where it goes, put a cap back on a bottle, brush some grounds into the knockbox, close the fridge door, refold a towel, re-wet the milk towel. Do those little things that you know need to be done that just keep compounding as you ignore them. If you take little bits of time out of each drink, that's totally legit. That's like a savings account. It's like something that will accrue interest in your interest, in the customer's interest, because a messy bar creates a messy mind. And it also is not fun to look at from the customer's point of view. It also spreads the mess. So if you put a cup down on top of a pile of coffee and water, and somebody wants to, take that cup and put it in their car, or they rest it on their knee, and you're just spreading mess around the cafe. Work clean. SCA Expo is coming up, and during the competitions, go and watch how people make their line of drinks and clean their bar as they go. You're going to see people that are in control, and they can deliver a really great service because they don't look at the things that they have yet to do because they're just doing them as they go. So working clean is really critical. Don't be afraid to take a second to take care of your bar. Really just make the bar look as beautiful as it can in the middle of the most heated part of the rush. So working clean, huge. Part of this is that you have to have, I like to say you have to have about 3 things on your mind to do after you get done with what you're doing. So for the bar, that might look like once you're done making these 2 mochas and you wipe down your machine or you reset the grinder area, you're going to pivot and put the milk away because the order came in and you were in the middle of making the drinks. You couldn't put the milk in the fridge at that time. Turn around, put the milk away. After you're done putting the milk away, have a couple of more things that you know you need to be doing. As you're steaming milk is a great time to think of these things. I find it sort of like a Zen moment, if you will, where at that time I really can't do many other things, especially if it's a large drink. It's almost like this little mental oasis when I'm steaming milk. now I can game plan a little bit. Now I can kind of look around the cafe and be like, oh my goodness, I can't believe how dirty that table is. And then I can make that part of the list of things I need to do once I, get done making this drink. You get my drift. Always be a few steps ahead of where you are. And don't ever be in that position of stopping after the drink and kind of putting your hands in your pockets and looking around because, well, you're not going to make any friends that way for sure. So another thing on the bar that is important is taking care of problems, taking care of mistakes confidently and quickly. Don't, get flustered and red-faced about it. Everybody spills milk. Mistakes happen. And if you can deal with them quickly and confidently and just jump right back into service, fine, great. Just do it that way. If you can take care of messes right away and quickly, go for it. A big coffee spill down the side of the counter onto the floor, it kind of demands your attention. And it does suck that you have to stop service, basically, in order to deal with something kind of catastrophic. But it does need to be dealt with. And finally, I will say to bar, in order to really crush the rush, be aware of your demeanor. Now, I constantly have to work on this, as you all know. When you're on bar, you can get intense and you're in the zone. You're just knocking pucks out and putting drinks on the counter and yelling out mocha every 5 minutes. That can make you look a little intense. And sometimes your demeanor can create a certain sense of tension that customers reflect back to you. And then you're like, oh, well, why are they so uptight? Well, you don't realize it. You're kind of putting that vibe out yourself. Be aware that your demeanor is not kind of poisoning the well, so to speak. When there's people in the cafe, it's going to be busy. You're going to be intense. You're going to want to crush it. So at the same time, you want to make things look effortless. You want to be in control and moving well, calmly, but efficiently, and producing a high volume and not giving an overly aggressive impression to the guest. Now, finally, I'm going to talk to all of us. Anybody who is working in the cafe, be you a barista working on the machine or on the register, wherever, it is all of our responsibilities to be aware of our surroundings and to take responsibility for the experience of a customer. That means that we have to be aware of where people are in the cafe and direct them where we can. So as you're giving change back to somebody who just purchased a coffee at the register, you can sense that somebody's looking for the Wi-Fi password to your right. You can take a moment to help them in that scenario. If you're on the bar and you're putting up a chai on the counter and you see somebody kind of pacing back and forth with an empty cup in their hand, well, guess what? They're looking for the bus bin. And you can guide them to what they need to do with their dirty dishes. Now, it's easy for us in our positions to sort of get tunnel vision and think I am only responsible for what's in front of me. And that is absolutely false. At least it should be. If you've been told otherwise, this is, I guess, just my opinion, but everybody is responsible for the experience that the guest has in the cafe. From the time they get in the door to the time they leave, we kind of have to put ourselves out past where we are on the bar and take ownership of what is being experienced out on the floor. So what that looks like sometimes also is, beyond guiding people, is taking on responsibility to notice who orders what. It's a kind of interesting thing that our minds do. Our minds are constantly processing information, taking in information. So even if you don't think about something, but you see it, you can recall it later. And, you could be driving and I'll look at a house, a red house. And then later on, I wasn't thinking, I think I'll focus on a red house so I can remember it later. But somebody says, hey, remember that red house that we passed? And I could say, yeah, I do. Because I looked at it, because my mind registered that it was there. You as a barista or, on register, wherever you are, you can be aware of your surroundings enough that when I ask you, where does this drink go? Or who ordered this drink? Somebody behind the bar should know who ordered it because they looked at that person. They registered the tone of voice what clothes they were wearing, how tall they were, whatever it was that's an identifying characteristic of that person. If you make it like my friend Jesse Harriet of Copper Horse Coffee says, put your head on a swivel, always be looking around and aware of your surroundings, you're going to pick up a ton of information. Not in a way that you have to keep a ledger in your mind, but you'll be able to help out when it comes to clarifying where drinks go or being aware of who's in the cafe when. So we take responsibility to notice those things collectively. Then we're going to be able to more effectively run the shift and crush the rush. Another thing I'll say to everybody is that you really need to make sure that you're watching the internal dialogue that is going on in your mind, because sometimes when a customer does something that we don't like, or a coworker that always kind of drops the ball in one area, you might look at the shift schedule and go like, I'm going to have to stay on them about this one thing. And you just kind of set yourself up for disappointment by continually feeding into this fear and repeating to yourself all these negative thoughts about the customer, about how it's not fair, about how this person should be different. And what you're ending up doing is you're filling your mind with these negative thoughts about the situation you're in. And all the while, you're not really taking control of the situation itself, and you're kind of making the situation worse. You can't really confidently welcome a group of people into a cafe for a great coffee experience from beginning to end, and do it with just confidence and grace and have people just rave about it if you have this internal dialogue about how terrible everything is. Because it shows. It shows in your work. It shows in your demeanor. Try to keep your mindset on the positive where you can. Make sure that you have a generous view of people, your coworkers, how you can help and how you can provide solutions, how you can serve and make people better and make a situation better, rather than kind of bemoaning the fact that you have to be in a situation where that might be required of you. I think that's the high road. Now, it doesn't mean that we're always going to choose that way, but I feel like the more we do, the more likely it is that we're going to have a better time when it's busy in the cafe. Now, finally, I'll say this, that we all want to help. Just like I said, help provide solutions. But you want to be able to help in a helpful way. So it kind of means that you should know where you can assist without actually being in the way. So if I'm on a bar and I'm done resetting my station and everybody's ordering drip coffee, and so I'm kind of ahead right now, and I want to help out the register because the receipt printer paper is going out, it wouldn't be helpful for me to simply nudge my way in there and scoot down below, kind of like tap them out of the way and put the register tape in there right when they're trying to print a receipt, just because I'm trying to jump on the opportunity. That's not a helpful way to help. Wait until maybe they step away from the register where there's space, and I can just kind of swoop in and throw the roll of receipt paper on there for them. I'm assisting my coworker in a helpful way. One thing you could do is simply ask, how can I help you? And they might have an answer for you. Sometimes they won't, but you'll be surprised. Sometimes if they've been thinking about something that they wanted to do but couldn't do, maybe you can brew more coffee. Maybe you can help them put pastries in bags or grind coffee that customers just purchased, things like that. Register, maybe you can help by setting up some milk pitchers, or you can help by putting away the milk order or grabbing dishes off the counter that customers left there, something like that. You're always going to want to be helping out your coworkers in a helpful way and taking responsibility, again, for the entire cafe customer's experience. So we're serving our customers, we're serving each other as we serve the customers, and just having a good time as we do it. Now, finally, we come to the point where we talk about after the rush. This is basic, but just communicate again about what needs to be done, restock, reset the cafe, and then relax. You can take the opportunity to relax. If you've done all the things that we just talked about, clarifying, communicating, working clean, taking time to do the right things, helping each other, directing customers, all those things. If you did what we just talked about, it's not going to be a long road to recovery after the rush has subsided and people are happy in their chairs. Take a moment, drink a coffee, do something that kind of helps you reset yourself. Now is an opportunity also to maybe communicate about what happened during the rush, because not everything is going to be great. Sometimes things happen where you need to communicate, like, what happened there, maybe how can I be better in that way, or I'm sorry about that time where I spilled that drink on you. Managers, now you have a responsibility during these times to enact change based on the feedback you're getting from these rushes. And it might not be verbal feedback, but when you work in or observe a rush and you see the confusion in the baristas or the customers, that's your responsibility. That is something that you need to be making notes of and then follow through on. So let's say a barista was confused about the options that there are available on a particular new drink. If that's the case, then the next step for a manager is to clarify, whether via email or in person in a meeting, that particular point. We all kind of learn as we go. And part of this also informs the next step, which is when we introduce a new drink, we'll think ahead even more. This goes back right to the beginning in preparation. If you go through a rush, you should be approaching it as a way of intentional practice and gaining information and feedback on how to improve for the next time, to improve your systems, your skills, etc. So if you're not doing that, then you're not getting the most out of this time, because this is a reflection of your true skill as a team and as an individual within a team. So managers definitely need to be on high alert when it comes to these rushes. Extract every piece of information out of it and let it inform the way that you manage, the way that you communicate, the way people work next time that we have a large group of people in. This will help us. These rushes are critical times for us to be able to improve our systems and workflows. And I hope that these tips will help you crush the rush. Something I like to do with people, this is an additional tip, is called drink drills. Maybe you do this in your cafe. I find this to be really, really helpful. Drink drills are basically just taking items from your menu as they stand in different formats, maybe a list of 5 or 6, and having your baristas do mock orders and kind of writing down as a competition judge how they're doing, things they can improve, writing notes, go back and do it again, repeat. Way better to do this than to simply take time in the lab all the time to practice different latte art pours and cappuccinos. That's fun. That's great. But if you're not able to juggle, a few 16-ounce lattes, a drip coffee, an espresso for here, and a chai, then all that latte art practice and all of those traditional cappuccino practices, they're not for nothing, but maybe spending our time and energy in less than ideal places. So drink drills are really helpful to do to really prepare yourself for the rush. So there you have it, just a little bit of a guide, sort of a framework for thinking about breaking down the way we can crush the rush. I hope that these were helpful for you. And there are things that I've just picked up over the years of doing it right, doing it wrong, observing different forms and ways of handling heavy times of business. And I do believe that the principles outlined here are great for honing your skills and smoothing out the edges and really help you in the goal of crushing the rush. So if you want the show notes for this episode, you can go to keystotheshop.com, and there will be a window on the sidebar of the website where you can enter your email. And when you do, you'll be signed up to receive the show notes and other writings and resources and links from the show to your inbox weekly. So basically the key takeaways from every episode and a list of the resources that were mentioned as a supplement to the information talked about in each episode. So keystotheshop.com to do that. And if you're not subscribed yet, please do subscribe to Keys to the Shop on wherever you listen to podcasts. And if you have the opportunity to leave a rating or review, if you like what we do here at Keys to the Shop, and that would be awesome as well. If you want to contact me directly, you can do so by emailing Chris at keystotheshop.com. That's CHRIS at keystotheshop.com. If you have questions or comments about the episodes and or suggestions and ways I can improve the show, I am all ears. I really do want this show to get better and better and to be more useful to you as we go. It's been a joy to do it. Also, Keys to the Shop is offering consulting and training for you and your cafe. If you want to become a better professional, if you want to have a better team, higher performing staff and management team, I can definitely help you out. If you want to find out the way that would look for you and your cafe, let's have a conversation. Just email me again at Chris at keystotheshop.com, or you can call me 502-715-1465. Well, that's it for today's show. I'm really thankful for you taking the time to listen. Hopefully the information shared here will help you the next time you have a bunch of people in the cafe that need to taste your delicious coffee and experience your great service in mass. And we can do that even better as a result of applying these principles in your cafe. Have an awesome week. I really appreciate you. And as always, I hope that this episode has truly given you keys to the shop.